Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Magella and Carly, two romantasy-obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Okay, welcome to this episode of Fated, the podcast. I'm Carly.
And I'm Magella.
And today is the day that we are going to dive deep into Throne of Glass, the first-ish novel in the series by Sarah J Maas, because there is a novella collection that comes kind of before it called The Assassin's Blade. Go back and listen to that episode. We've already gone through that one and explored that one at great depth. But today it's all about Throne of Glass. But before we dive into this, Magella, what are you reading at the moment?
Well, I had one of those moments where I was scrolling through TikTok and someone shared a video about a book that she was loving or had loved or wasn't. Anyway, it really spoke to me and I downloaded it straight away off Amazon, and it's called The Last Storm by J.D. Linton. I hadn't heard of that author before. I hadn't heard of the series. I don't know if it's an up and coming or one of those ones that maybe is a little bit older that has kind of missed the hype wave on BookTok.
Okay.
But anyway, that is what I'm about to begin. So I haven't started it yet, but it's what I am starting to read now, this episode. And you, what are you reading?
So still have a little bit of Crown of Midnight to go, which is the book after Throne of Glass. But I also just finished Malibu Rising, which again is a different genre by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I listened to it on audio and I freaking loved it. If you have read any of her books like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or Daisy Jones and the Six, you'll really, really love Malibu Rising. It's just light and fun, and yeah, loved going back into like Malibu in like the 50s, 60s and 70s. It was really, really fun. So that is where I'm at. But Throne of Glass, I read it recently. I finished
where we're at, yes.
Very, very recently. When did you read it? How long ago do you reckon it's been?
I reckon it would only be within the last 4 months. I feel like it has been a very fast, would we say, descent into romantasy, or would we say like a rising into? But it is, once it clicked over, it was very fast. So in the last 6 months has been when it all began. Mm-hmm. And I read a few series before I started The Throne of Glass. So I read ACOTAR, and I read some Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I read a book series that was definitely more smut than fantasy or romance. I think we'd probably call it porn. But, and then I decided after it just took a bit of time to make that commitment, because Throne of Glass is the biggest series out of almost all fantasy series that I have come across. And especially the last book is enormous. It is very, very large. And I had heard a few people say it's a bit of a slow start. So Sarah J Maas seems to have this thing where, the first ACOTAR, Court of Thorns and Roses was a bit slower. Yeah. And, the same, people have said the same about Throne of Glass. It's a bit slower. And the same, Crescent City, people are basically saying both books, very dense, very hard to get through.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, I think, that happens with those characters. You get immersed and enmeshed, and then the pace.
I'm really feeling that. Yeah, I'm really feeling that, having being sort of nearly finished Crown of Midnight, which comes after this one, having read Throne of Glass, having read The Assassin's Blade, it is a lot of, context creating, character building, world building. I am sensing from the things that I'm reading and hearing about Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash that it really ramps up, and that so I'm in a space of tingling anticipation, as Majella would say, and it does feel like Christmas is coming. Like, oh my gosh, if I'm really enjoying this already, how good is this going to get? So let's do a little bit about the setting of this book. So this whole series is set in the land of Aurelia. I think that's how you say it. I'm not probably going to get all the pronunciation right.
We're just going to put disclaimers that all of our pronunciations are our own. Oh my God. And we are doing the best we can.
We are.
And we are open to being corrected, but gently and kindly.
Yeah, gently and kindly. I did listen to another lovely podcast the other day, and she pronounced someone incorrectly the whole way through, and I had so much compassion for her, because I'm like, who knows how you actually do say these things. And we also, big massive obviously spoiler alerts. If you've got to this point and you're like, I haven't read Throne of Glass, please come back, go read it and come back. But this series is set in this land of Aurelia, and in the kingdom called Adalan.
That's how I would say.
And so we're really continuing the story of Celeana Sardothien, who is was a former assassin, and in this story she's now has been chosen to compete to become the king's champion, the awful, horrible king who's just disgusting and just horrible.
Yes.
And so we're kind of meeting her in this story. Just freshly out of Endovia, which is a place where all the slaves go and they work in the mines. She's been pulled out of there by Dorain, who is the king's son, the crown prince, who's nothing like his evil father, by the way, and Chaol Westfall, who's the king's captain of the guard. So those two have gone and taken her out of the salt mines, where it's been absolutely horrendous for her. I can't remember how long she'd been in there. A long time. Months, yeah?
A year.
Well done.
A year. And most people only last a month, they say. And she had almost escaped. There was a huge spectacle where she made it to the gate.
Yeah.
To the fence.
Yeah. And she was willing to die. So that's the thing we know now, is that she was actually, for her, it maybe wasn't an escape as such, but she just was done and she was ready to, whatever happened, but she made it so far she almost touched the wall, which is the furthest anyone got without being killed. So yeah, like context setting in the start, that's what's happening. She's being taken out of the mines, chosen to compete to potentially become the king's champion. And she has to compete. This book is all about this competition, really, isn't it? Like, she has to compete against 23 men to become the king's champion. So we've got a little bit of like Hunger Games vibes in this book, and the winner of that competition is going to serve the king for 6 years and be his assassin, right?
Yes.
And then there'll be
5,
3.
I think it is.
Yes. So, okay, do you want to dive in? Do you remember, like, how do you want to work through this? What do you remember about the story? What did you love about the story?
I think this story really, so I read this before I had read Assassin's Blade. Yep. So my reading, this is the first introduction to Celeana that I had experienced, and it really set her up as an incredible warrior / badass / PTSD coming from a traumatic past. So it didn't necessarily, like, I had a lot of respect for her, but I wasn't necessarily, I didn't connect with her straight away. I wasn't super enamored, like, oh my God, but more like very impressed and respected this incredibly hard journey that she had been, like, her life had obviously been hard. From the little bits that, like, I didn't know about what had happened in the desert and with Sam before that, but she felt broken. She definitely felt like this was her kind of deciding whether or not she wanted to fight for herself in a way, like if she was going to really hold on and reclaim who she was underneath everything that had happened to her. So I feel like I found it quite easy to get into the story, but you know, it's not really a romantasy in this book. I think it's much more like it is world building, character sort of setting, you know, putting plot points in place. It really, but in saying that, it was still very engaging.
Yeah, it really feels that youth fiction, sort of young adult fiction. But can you tell me, like, because I haven't read the rest of the series, does it become spicier? Does it become more new adult kind of fiction? Okay, great. I just got a little
yes, and it yes, it definitely does, and also you get more point of view, so it's not all written from Celeana's point of view. So you know, as you go on this, it doesn't become, even though she is the heroine throughout the thing, she becomes interwoven with some very key people so you almost get like these stories that are coming from 3 different or 4 different perspectives, like the same thing, but it's happening in different lands, or, you know, they're fighting on different sides. So whereas this book felt much more like this was Celeana's, you are meeting Celeana. This is Celeana. Here is what I've been through, who I am, and here's a hint of where I'm going, and kind of, you know, but you don't really understand the scope of it, or the vastness, or her potential.
She's really, in this book, you know, she's been chosen as a candidate for this competition to become the King's champion, but she's in a really bad state. She's had, you know, a year of malnutrition, hard work, psychological trauma even in Indovia,
torture, and whipping.
Yeah, horrible. So, you know, there's even, she can't even keep food down. She's that malnourished. She's weak. She's thin. She's really a shadow of her former self, which was like the top assassin in all of the land before she was sent away, betrayed and sent away to Indovia. So this story for me was like, as you said, her deciding, do I want to return to that, who I was, the assassin, and be that again, or do I not care? Like the start of the book, there's sort of that sense of like, do I, you know, she was happy to be in the castle. You know, you hear her talk about how she loved the foods and the linens and the clothes and all the things that she had in her former life. But then there was like, gosh, she had to rebuild her strength to even be able to nourish herself and have food, let alone get food down, let alone compete against these 23 other men that were just, I mean, so strong and so capable. So that was an interesting little thing. And that also, I was like, you know, is she going to, which way is she going to go here? And she obviously hates this king too. He's horrible. Do I want to even be his champion? Was another question. So
yes, there's an ethical, moral conflict there of like, is my freedom worth even though she negotiates and gets it down to 4 years, I think. That's still 4 years of dirty work where she would have to go out and do his bidding without questioning it, killing people that potentially are probably on, you know, her side, I guess, are from the lands where she is from, and from other places where, you know, they don't have the freedom from the colonization of, you know, Ardalan. Anyway,
it doesn't matter.
But it is, for me, this felt much more like a real action mystery, because obviously along the way, all the assassins start to be killed off. So not only are they getting killed off literally in the competition by like each other, then there are, you know, people dying outside of the competitor space, and these are people, you know, as you said before, these are people that are, you know, these are warriors, these are swordsmen, these are master potion people, these are, you know, people that have survived the worst probably that this land has to offer. You know, they've lived in slums or they've sold their soul. Like, these are not necessarily honorable warriors. These are people who have killed and stolen and, you know, betrayed people to stay alive. And in some ways you can't even blame them, because it sounds like a very hard world to live in. Like, there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of, I guess, class division. Magic has been, I don't know if you mentioned that, but magic has been suppressed. So somehow in this land, there is no magic able to be wielded. Yes. And so, and it's hard because of all the books. I'm not sure where things happen, but there used to be magic.
Yes.
I think that is mentioned in this book. There used to be magic and healers and people who could
and Adelan vanished
all that kind of stuff.
So burnt the books, all the stories of magic gone, killed a lot of the healers, killed a lot of the people that had these special powers. But during this competition, as you said, people are dying outside of the actual contest in really weird ways, mutilation, but really brutal ways and out of the ordinary. So alongside this story of Celeana competing to try to win is her also trying to figure out what's going on. Why are some of them being found in passageways absolutely, you know, dismembered? Like, it's quite gruesome. And so she starts to sort of investigate that on her own as well. And through that, you know, she comes across these secret passageways behind, you know, different tapestries in her room, and starts to, there's this whole other story that starts to come about Gavin and Elena. The ghost of Elena begins to visit her in her room and in her dreams. And she's like, but magic is gone. But, is this, you know, a hallucination, or is this real? And we get this fantasy element that then just starts to come in, because without that, it probably isn't really a fantasy romance sort of installment. We do have the magic, and look, we also need to keep the spicy stuff but bubbling along. What's also happening here is that Chaol, the King's Guard, he is training Celeana. So there's a bit of some stuff sort of bubbling along with Chaol there.
That's right. Some sexual tension, but they don't. Neither of them want it, but both are like, he annoys me. She's a brat. She's insufferable. You know, and he is a very honorable. I feel like he is the head of the King's Guard. He is the best friend of Dorain. He came to be the head of the King's Guard for Dorain because they've been friends for so long. And Dorain is the opposite of his father. He seems to be full of earnestness, and I mean, he has that little bit of playboy prince energy. Like, he's very attractive. All the women want him. He probably had sex when he was 12.
It's quite charming.
You know, like, he's exactly but is obviously, you know, a little bit lonely and really values this friendship with Chaol, who treats him like an equal and doesn't necessarily pander to him. And then Chaol has this, he's wanting to do the right thing. He's wanting to protect his friend, protect the kingdom, even though he knows that the king is not, you know, a good person. I think in a way he feels like at least he can be a bit of a buffer between, like, maybe he can soften some of the punishments. Maybe he can make sure his team is so well trained that they won't incur the wrath of the king. So it's an interesting kind of, there's this beautiful, strong friendship with these two, and then this wildfire woman who is putting herself back together. And I guess that little love triangle begins where, you know, there's sexual tension between everyone, and Celeana's coming off, you know, a very traumatic heartbreak, the worst kind of heartbreak, and is probably thinking, I will never love again, or and also I don't deserve to love again, because I think she really took that on, that it was her fault that happened. You know, she was the reason why it had happened. So that's very hard to then allow yourself to have happiness, to be like, yes, you know. And also the again, back to that kind of ethical, moral conflict of, like, if she does have feelings for the prince, for example, his father is both potentially going to be her boss, and also is this tyrant, is this terrible, evil ruler who has taken away magic, and she grew up with magic, like from her land, like, so she knows
and he
what
destroyed her land.
magic is.
He destroyed her land where she's originally from. So lots of conflict here. And the love triangle with Dorain and Chaol, like we see that she's drawn to them for different reasons. Like, Dorain, yes, he's charming, and as you said, a little bit of that playboy vibe. He makes her blush, but they have this beautiful shared love of reading. Like when he like left her the books or got her some, a pile of books, and then they would stay up reading together. It was very chaste. Like he'd visit her room, they kissed, but they never had sex. Like it was a beautiful, again, a little bit of more of an
healing.
innocent,
I feel like it was a healing.
Yeah, probably reminiscent slightly of Sam Cortland that we learn about in The Assassin's Blade. And then she's got Chaol, who's training her and has a little bit of that, like, I'm going to toughen you back up kind of vibe, because you need it to survive and to not be killed in this contest. And so, there's an attraction there with his strength, his honor, his commitment to, as because she's bratty and rude and fair enough. She's been through some shit. But, despite all that, he's still like, we're running in the morning together and I'm training you till you.
That's right. He doesn't treat her like she's weak.
Yeah. So, both of them very strong-willed. Chaol and Celeana very strong-willed, butting heads, but you see this relationship developing and a deep bond of trust towards the end, which we obviously see as we go into Crown of Midnight as well. And really the turning point in that relation, like that love triangle, was when she turned up uninvited to the ball. I don't know if you remember the royal ball. And she actually asks Chaol to dance with her. And he says no because of, his position and everyone watching. And so she ends up dancing all night with Dorain. And then Dorain goes up to her rooms and they make out, have a good little make out session. But Chaol is always there. He's in the shadows. He's watching. And honorably, like watching this thing blossom with his best friend, but having feelings for himself, that's where that complexity comes in. That Sarah J Maas really writes wonderfully well about as well. And then we talk about the friendships. She met Nehemia. I don't know how to say that as well, but Princess Nehemia, and they become really fast friends and bond over their, shared experience of being outsiders in that castle. Yes. Sorry. What did you think about that relationship?
I feel like there was definitely setting that up to be something significant. I feel like Nehemia came from the lands, there's this understanding, from where Celeana was from, and, there was a connection there. Plus Nehemia seems very spiritual and strong and doesn't need saving. So she's this character, which is what Celeana probably envisioned that she would have become, like someone that was this very powerful woman who, is still beautiful, but is always working for the good of her people, which is like, I guess, that real appeal. And so that's why I think they became good friends as well, because they understood that they were equals and that they both inherently are driven by this loyalty to the land in which they were born. They both feel this sort of duty-bound honor, which you find out why in further books with Celeana, especially. But Nehemia, they kind of paint her backstory there and what happened to her lands and why she's come to learn the common tongue and that kind of thing. So it feels like you're meeting someone that's going to be instrumental in the plot in some way. And then you also meet Caitlin, which I think is interesting too, because she's a character that you dislike, but you can understand why she is the way she is. Like there's this desperation to both be with this man that she thinks she loves or is really attracted to, but also wants to be the princess and eventually one day the queen. So there's this little power, trip happening on the side where, she's kind of playing people off and stuff. And, it's never going to work because Celeana is clearly the main character. But it's an interesting, side character
and
with this. How
what I
easily
found really interesting, having read Sarah J Maas so much, I'm like, I don't trust anyone. Like, I just don't trust anyone. And so as the relationship between Celeana and Nehemia was developing, I was still like, yeah, nah, I don't know. Like, Celeana has been betrayed before by female friends. And, I don't know, is it the cynic in me? But I was like, no, Nehemia is just here for her own agenda, and she's playing Celeana. And is this real? Like, I had that sense throughout this book and halfway through the next of, I don't know if you're really here for this friendship or you're here to mine information or to whatever. So it's really interesting how, SJM has definitely taught me not to trust anyone. But then, you have, is it Keltane or Caitlin? I can't remember.
I'd say Caitlin, but I think
that's okay. I'm hoping we're just talking about the same person.
I'm sure we'll be corrected.
Who's very obviously deceitful and very obviously jealous. And I just think that's really interesting because obviously we see that in our, we can see that in real life relationships of the person who's, a bit more two-faced and does it behind your back, and the person that literally, plays you off other people and tries to poison you blatantly in front of everybody. So the female friendships are always an interesting one for me to be like, at what point do I fully trust this female in Celeana's life? So yeah, that's
because it is interesting how quickly you become defensive of her, territorial, protective of Celeana. I think because we get her point of view the most, and we know, especially you having read Assassin's Blade before it, I think you know that she has this soft heart underneath this, very kind of like strong exterior, and then knowing kind of what she went through with Sam, and then through the mines, and then being so broken, and then wanting her to not be, hurt kind of thing. It is very Hunger Games. It is like, please, she has to make it. But like it is awful. Like the fights are awful. Like the people, like the way they compete is very intense, and she makes one, and she always does this. She does it throughout the series. There'll always be this character that she saves for some reason, or she throws out an olive branch, or she does something, and that character then becomes not beholden, but she gets that a life debt almost with these people throughout. And she usually does that, and they always write this. She does it with it's a feeling. She has this like gut instinct. She's like, I don't know why I did it. I felt like I had to save him. I felt like I had to do that. I felt like I had to, reach out to that person, kind of thing, or I had to be in this place. She's very driven by her gut instinct. It'd be so interesting what her human design was. I feel like she's got a real
astrology chart.
Love her astrology chart. Yeah, that's right. She feels like a projector.
Yeah.
Personally.
And look, I mean, I don't feel like this book needs hours and hours of, deep excavation and stuff. Like really the themes are that the competition, will she survive it, and the introduction of some romance and love stories that we feel like might continue, and some friendships. So it's kind of, does that feel like it for you? Throne of Glass was just that real world building, context giving, character
it definitely felt like a step,
and the
it
magic,
was a step
the magic
into the world.
So the magic comes through. Cain is he's the real big behemoth guy that she just can't seem to kill off. And he seems to be getting bigger throughout the story. With the magic, we find out at the end, he's actually the one that let the something, I can't remember what, through the portal, the really horrible monster.
And with the word keys and stuff.
But at the end she takes him down. Oh, that's right. With the really big scene where Eleanor and Nehemia help her, because he's actually going to kill her. Is that the right book? Yes, he's actually going to kill her. So these females come in around her, don't they, and help her survive. And of course, in my brain at the end of this book was why is she the chosen one? What is she here to do? What's the mission? Why is this queen from hundreds of years ago coming and helping her? What does Nehemia see in her? And there's lots of, if I went back and read it now, I'd probably see a lot more foreshadowing and linking stuff. But that's where I was at the end of the book, is just like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's see what happens with Chaol. Let's see what happens with Dorain. And once she becomes the king's champion, what then? And again, like all of SJM, like the moral dilemma stuff, like what then? Because she's going to have to go and do his bidding and killing. And that's exciting. Can't wait to hear more about that.
That sounds so weird. It's like all this killing and beheading. It's exciting. It's, it's good things coming up for us, I think.
Can't wait to find out.
I think there was a lot of seeds planted. I felt like this book was something that I don't know if I've even read it again. Like, it was definitely one of the books where I was like, cool, thanks for telling me that. It's like, yes, bit of the backstory. We've started a few things here. We've stoked a few little fires. I'm very curious. I want to know what's happening, but there is no answers to anything yet, which really makes me feel agitated, because there is no resolution. Like, it's all like everything is open. It's just like, where is she going to go? Who's important to her? Who's she going to pick? Who is she going to end up sleeping with?
Yeah.
What's she going to do?
What's the
all
magic?
That kind of stuff.
What is all this word magic? Yeah. Like, stay tuned.
Which is, I guess, what you want from the first book in a series, right? You want it to kind of, whet your appetite and want you seeking answers and getting straight on to the next book, because but again, it is like, I think the more books you read in a series, there is that just build upon feeling that then sort of amplifies the enjoyment of the book, because you have built these relationships. So this is like, I think relationship building requires the most effort and the most energy. So I think that you'd have to be in your, like follicular phase for that one, Carly. I really feel like you'd want to be committed and have energy to get through.
Okay. Well, I'll get through Crown of Midnight so we can come back and have another conversation about the next installment. But look, I think that's it. It's a bit of an appetizer book, a bit of a, appetite whetter. And yeah, I'm excited. I feel the ramping up is happening in Crown of Midnight. So we'll come back and do another episode on that when I've got that under the belt. But I think this is, where we could probably chuck in a line for our listeners, a beautiful line for our listeners. Every episode, we give you a line. You can engage with us and share with us who you think said it and maybe from what book, if you can remember, because all the books do start to kind of blend a little.
That's right.
So, Magella, would you like to share?
Yes, I just thought this one was quite sweet. His breath was warm on her neck as he bent his head, resting his cheek against her hair. Her heart beat so quickly, and yet she felt utterly calm, as if she could have stayed there forever and not minded, stayed there forever and let the world fall apart around them.
Lovely. And on that note, we're going to wrap up.
Comforting note. That's right.
Lovely.
But we'd love to know in the comment if you have read Throne of Glass and if you felt the same. And if there was anything in there that stood out to you that we didn't mention, because I feel like we kind of, we didn't go into specifics about certain moments with characters. But I do remember feeling that there was all these little pops of revelation where it'd be like, she went behind, the curtain in her room and she went down those stairs. It's like, ooh, and then when she discovered word marks, and then when she, found out that people had been possessed, like there was all these little moments where I was just like,
well, it'll be interesting for me
great
when I read the whole series to maybe come back and be like, oh, okay. Like read it again, because that's what people tell me they do. They read it again. They're like, oh, now I see all these bits and these clues and all of that sort of stuff. But the first read for me was just really felt like, just getting the foundation down of these characters in this world. And, I'm excited to keep going. So thank you, Magella. We'll have a chat in the next episode.
That's right. Can't wait.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp or encourage you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it, and drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.